The topic for today is called Healing for Success. I think there was a lot of different things that entered into my teaching that. You know, last week we had the healing prayer for my friend, Hal Fuquoy, the one who donated the swimming pool. And I was touched that everybody here was praying for Hal. Then throughout the week, I had a problem with my tooth, and I had some pain, and I went to the dentist. I thought I got everything taken care of. Yesterday I went again. And so, you know, we deal with things throughout life where we need to have healing. The lesson aim is to help people recognize wounds in all areas and seek for and appreciate the method God chooses for healing our wounds. So another reason that I'm giving this lesson is somebody encouraged me. They said, we always talk about that we talk about spiritual, physical, emotional, and financial, but we haven't heard much about the physical. And I said, let me bring a lesson on the physical. And so that was another factor of why I chose to say healing for success. My pastor in the U.S., by the way, this man that we prayed for did pass on. He had the ultimate healing of death. And I call that the ultimate healing of death because when I was in the U.S., we call it a parts house. You call it spares. We go somewhere to get spares for our car. That man told me that he and his wife had adopted several children, and then he came down with cancer. And so the wife said, I cannot manage this family without you. And she said, we need to pray that God will heal you. So as they were praying, the husband got an inspiration from God. He said it was very clear. God said, I will heal you. It's going to be in one of three ways. I will either heal you by the intervention of a doctor and medical treatment, or I will heal you by divine intervention, like a miracle, or I will heal you by the healing of death. And he said, I told my wife that, and he said she was not so excited about the last option. But he said, I realized that even death can be a healing. And in the case of my friend, Hal, I think it was a healing. Do you have that picture, Kivette? We'll put it on the screen. He had a massive stroke in the cerebral part of his brain, also in the brain stem, and he was paralyzed from the nose down. So the only thing he can do is blink. He can't eat, he can't breathe on his own, he's on a machine. And so that healing of death was probably the best healing. The cerebral part of his brain could have some healing, but the brain stem, they said there's no healing. And so my pastor he went to AI and he said, I want a picture of a 65-year-old man in a hospital bed. And this is what AI came up with. And it looks a lot like Hal, a lot. Then he said, I want a picture of a 65-year-old man entering into heaven with Jesus. And so this is what AI came up with. And it said, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He said God can even use a machine to create an image. And so you can see that Hal received the healing of death. Today we will, there's 4 different areas, spiritual, physical, emotional, and financial, and maybe I'll make a series out of this, but today I've chosen physical because of all the different things. Eunice and I are leaving immediately after this service to go to Eldoret to discuss with Chase the program there for his university. And I have pain. I still have pain in my tooth. I have pain in my side. I'm not sure what this is from. But we continue on. We're looking for healing, but our problems can't stop us. So today we'll discuss the physical. It's how to identify and determine if the pain is consistent with certain activity. So the pain in my side, I think it was because Emmanuel and I were working on the farm and we changed the light, and as we were lifting, I think I pulled a muscle. And so I don't think that's a long-term problem. Okay, but we need to identify this. Maybe if it's not a muscle, it's something inside. Then we have to identify that problem. So in order to get healing, we have to identify our problem. And just like the mad person who doesn't know they're being mad, they don't know that they're doing the wrong thing, they have to listen to feedback and identify the problem before they can be healed. The emotional problems that we have, the spiritual problems, we have to identify that. But today, we're talking about physical. Number 3, some wounds are visible, they're external. It's easy to identify. Somebody falls down in the ditch and breaks their leg and their bone is sticking out. You say they have a broken leg. Now you can receive healing. But they fall down and it's just a sprain. And you don't see anything. There's no bruises. And maybe the parents are they're hurrying to go somewhere and they said, get up, just get up, keep moving, we have to go. And this child is crying and whimpering. We haven't identified the problem yet. And so maybe it needs an x-ray. Maybe it needs a professional to identify what is the problem. And then sometimes we eat certain foods. You know, we live in a world that's not perfect. There are people who are allergic to certain things. And I knew of a man who grew up on a dairy farm. He drank a lot of milk. And then when they moved, he was a young boy. When they moved, the father sold the dairy farm. They moved to another state, and they were buying milk. Okay, so now this boy begins to have a lot of problems, a lot of physical problems, indigestion, just all kinds of things. So they go to the doctor, they do an extensive series of tests because he's not able to do life with all of these problems. They find out that he's lactose intolerant. Lactose is like what's in milk. But he said, I've always drank milk. I've drank milk all my life. Now, why suddenly? Well, we find out now that processed milk is different than natural milk. And so sometimes you can have a physical problem, and it takes time to understand, why do I have this physical problem? I'm doing the same things I've always done. But maybe you have changed something slightly and you don't even know it. So you have to identify, what is the cause? What's happening to keep me from having the life that God wants me to have because I have these physical problems? And then there's people who they just deal with, they say, well, I haven't healed completely, but I'm just going to do life anyway. They're just ignoring. I could have done that with my teeth, but, you know, if you ignore your teeth long enough, they'll go away. And plus, there was a lot of pain, so I couldn't ignore it. So, external wounds are visible. Somebody falls down on the motorbike and they're scratched up and they're bleeding. We know what we have to do to take care of that, right? But what about internal wounds? Okay, let me go on external wounds just a little bit more. Somebody said here that everybody wants to go to the U.S. I just listened to a story about a man who took his young son fishing, and there were a lot of ticks. You have ticks here, but they don't carry Lyme's disease. Have you ever heard of Lyme's disease? Well, the ticks, they can carry Lyme's disease. So they took these people fishing. He took his young son fishing. They were trying to have a good day, but at the end of the day, there were 38 ticks. And then they began to develop, he didn't know about Lyme's disease, and so they began to develop what's called a bullseye wound. A bullseye wound is it's a red in the center, and then it's orange, and then it's black around. And they started to have all these strange symptoms, falling down, and dizziness, and vomiting, and, you know, they go to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, people are crazy about Lyme's disease right now. I think it's something else. So It took them a long time to figure out what that problem really was. And then the dad, and this can happen, he started to experience similar pains as his son, and they thought it was called a companion pain. You know, like if Eunice and I are closely connected, there's been times when I was sick in the U.S. and she feels pain because our spirits are connected. So this man thought, well, I'm feeling this pain because my 3-year-old has Lyme's disease. No, it turned out he had Lyme's disease too. And they hadn't taken precautions. You have to spray yourself. You have to tie your pant legs shut when you go out into certain areas. You have to have some protective clothing. You have to check yourself for ticks afterwards. So there's a lot of problems that can jump on us. And literally, in this case, jump on us. That's what a tick does. That can cause problems physically that hinder you in all these other areas of life. It can even hinder you mentally. Sometimes my sister worked in the hospital for 30-some years. These elderly ladies would come in and they were crazy. And they found out that they had a urinary tract infection. A urinary tract infection can make somebody have a mental illness. And so they aren't really crazy like we talked about earlier. It's a physical problem that's causing this mental problem. So this is a very important topic. So there's the internal wounds. The external wounds we can see: dog bites, insect bites, broken bones, missing limbs, all those things. Internal wounds can include diseases, high blood pressure, sugar diabetes, ulcer, hormonal imbalance, and digestive disorders. You can ignore those problems if you want to, but you'll probably have more problems. Or maybe you can just go to the doctor and just take a pill. I knew of a man, he didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to change his lifestyle. He didn't want to exercise. He didn't want to diet. He didn't want to walk. He just took one more pill and take it till he's taken a handful of pills. Now, some of those pills are contradicting the other pills because they all have side effects. And so it causes a lot of problems. Number 4, treatments can include divine intervention. That's what we always hope for, right? That's why people dash off to Mombasa to somebody who claims to be a healer, because they want this man to touch them or sprinkle his water on them or whatever, and all their problems are over. And they come home with the same problems and no money. So they just have more problems. Now, I'm not saying that divine intervention doesn't happen. It can happen. But it's according to your faith. Very true. And there are ways of knowing if it's your faith or somebody else's faith. Remember the lady who had the issue of blood in the Bible for 12 years. She went to all these different people, and some of them not only didn't help her, but they hurt her. They caused her more problems. And finally she believed in Jesus, and she shouldn't have even been in the crowd with that problem. But she went and touched the hem of his garment. Jesus said, "Who touched me?" The disciples are like, "How can you know? There's a big crowd here. Anybody?" No. He said, "Somebody touched me with intention. I felt grace going out." Then that lady could have ran away, but she was just honest. She said, "It was me." He said, "Because of your faith, you're healed." That was a personal faith. Then there's the faith of your friends. Remember the story of the man? Jesus was inside the building, and they opened up the roof, and they let him down in a blanket. And so it's good to have good friends. You can have bad friends. They're not going to do that for you. Never. All right, and then there is the man, of course, that we know by the pool of Bethesda. Jesus asked him, "Do you want to be healed?" Sound like a silly question, didn't it? Do you want to be healed? No, I'm just laying here enjoying the sunlight for 38 years. All right? But then Jesus said, "Take up your bed and walk." He could have had a lot of excuses. "I can't, my legs are bad, I can't because it's the Sabbath, the Pharisees are going to cause me a problem." But he jumped up, he took up his bed and walked. And then later, there must have been something causing that, because Jesus said, stop doing what you're doing or something worse will happen. So there maybe was something that he was doing that was causing him to have that problem. Treatments could include prescription drugs. Eunice used to take drugs freely, but every time she took one, I would look them up to see what the side effects are. So now I've trained her, and she says, before I take this drug, let me look at the side effects. Because maybe it's dizziness or vomiting or diarrhea or whatever. And then you don't realize it's the drug that's causing you the problem. And so you take a drug, but you better look at the side effects. C, diet and exercise. This can be for type 2 sugar diabetes. Type 1 sugar diabetes is more of a disease. But let me explain to you, when you take a sugar or a starch, your pancreas secretes insulin. And it normally over-secretes. So you've got a problem, especially in the U.S., where people maybe have a sweet roll and a cup of coffee for breakfast. Then the pancreas secretes insulin to counteract the sugar of this sweet roll, and it normally over produces, and so then your body goes through a sugar slump, and then you crave sugar again. So about 10 o'clock, you need a candy bar. And then it happens again. And then about noon, you want to have a lunch with a piece of pie. And so whenever you have something sweet or starchy, and it's normally the white things, white potatoes, white bread, like that, take something that takes longer to break down, like a protein, like a handful of ground nuts or some meat or something that it makes your body make an effort, so it counteracts. Otherwise, it overuses your pancreas. It's secreting insulin. It's coming back, and then you take another sweet. It's secreting insulin, and so eventually you can start to have type 2 sugar diabetes. And sugar diabetes, type 2 sugar diabetes, is a lot of times can be controlled by a diet. And I know of people there who they say, well, I can't give up my sweet rolls. I have to have my sweet roll in the morning. But then when they get sugar diabetes, they find out, yep, I can give up my sweet roll. Because they're motivated. All right, so D is herbs and natural remedies. I just found out something really interesting. Cayenne pepper has a lot of benefits if you know how to use it properly. Cayenne pepper is used for digestion and also for circulation. Internally, when you take cayenne pepper, and it doesn't really burn, it's not like a normal pepper that causes you problems. It can actually heal a stomach ulcer because of the way that it stops the blood flow in the wrong places and increases the blood flow in your circulation. And so if you have high blood pressure, cayenne pepper, if you take it properly. So study on that if you want to know that. This isn't for that. And also cayenne pepper, this doctor that was given the presentation, she said one of her children got cut with a machete and it was bleeding, and because she had taught her children what to do, they took cayenne pepper and dumped it on the wound and it stopped the bleeding. She said, sure, it burned a little bit, but he was already hurting. So how do you know if it was the pain of the wound or the pain of the cayenne pepper? Then another one is turmeric. Turmeric it contains something called curcumin. I studied this quite a while ago. Curcumin is released by black pepper. So if you take turmeric, and turmeric is good for inflammation. If you have joint pains, if you have arthritis, combined turmeric, black pepper, and like olive oil or milk or something that helps break it down. You have to know how to use these things properly. So now, if Kip Chumba has a problem with his eye, do we throw in pepper? No. We have to use wisdom in all of this. We have to do our study. If you have a problem, you get on YouTube and somebody said, oh, I had this terrible problem, I took this medication, I took this herb, and now I'm just living a wonderful life, I'm so happy, blah, 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 blah. And so you take this thing, but your body is not depleted in that. So is it going to help you? No. You have to know what you need. There's testing for that, but I think there's divine intervention. When we have a problem, we ask God, I want deliverance from this. I need healing for this problem. Can you lead me to the answer? And God will do that. E is doctors, examinations, and recommendations. Now, can I use cayenne pepper for my bad tooth? No, it's not going to work. I have to go to the dentist. He has to do some drilling and filling. And hopefully that problem is fixed now. So we use doctors. But even with doctors, there's the medical industry has turned into a business. Sometimes they keep you there longer than they need to so that they can extract more money from you. Sometimes they recommend medication because they're getting a kickback from the company that is making that medication. So it's good to get a second opinion, and sometimes a third opinion, because people can be corrupt. And then F, the healing of death, and that's what we're talking about here. Hal has experienced the healing of death, and he's in a much, much better place. But it's hard on the rest of us. It's hard on his wife. She doesn't know how will life go on without my husband, because they did everything together. And now he just retired from his job. He was still farming, but he retired, and so they had a lot of time together. I remember going to church, and they always, you can tell just by looking. They enjoyed each other, and they enjoyed each other's company. You know, they were friends, which is great. 5, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. If you have a physical problem, you continue to do what you've always done, it's going to continue. You're going to continue to have that. So, that teaches us that we need a motivation. Some people choose to live with a problem instead of making the effort to find a solution that works for them. Number 6 is motivation. I thought it was really funny. I came up with these motivations, and then this morning I thought, I forgot pain. Pain is the biggest motivator. If you've got a physical illness, pain will motivate you. Pain is what caused me to go to the dentist, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I didn't even write that on your paper, but if you have a pencil, you can write it down. I put down, your body is a temple. 1 Corinthians 6, 19 and 20. Don't you realize your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who lives in you and was given to you by God? You do not belong to yourself, for God bought you with a high price, so you must honor God with your body. Kipchumba, do you have that one?
Nasema ya kwamba hamjui ya kuwa mwili wenu ni hekalu la Roho Mtakatifu aliye ndani yenu, mliyepewa na Mungu, wala ninyi si mali yenu wenyewe, maana mlinunuliwa kwa dhamana. Sasa basi mtukuzeni Mungu katika miili yenu.
I think just prior to that, Paul is warning people against sexual sins. He said that's actually sinning against your own body. Because in your mind, you're saying, I'm just doing this for one time. This guy looks interesting, or this lady looks interesting. But your body is giving, I think it's 5 different chemicals that are bonding you with this person. Or if this person has a bad spirit, you end up with what's called soul ties. Mm-hmm. And so part of that spirit comes into you. And so it's warning us there not to do those kinds of things, because your body is a temple. Don't put things into your body that you wouldn't give to Jesus. In other words, would you give Jesus marijuana? No, I don't think so. LSD, any of those things. You wouldn't do that, would you? Jesus is in you.
Amen.
So are you going to feed that to Jesus in you? No, that's not a good idea. So that's a big, big motivator. After pain, this should be well, maybe before pain, I don't know which one's, probably pain comes first, but as the biggest motivator. But the next motivator is we are God's, we're not our own. We are God's handiwork. He created us. Are we going to spoil what He's created? Deliberately. By running around and having sex with a lot of different people, or filling our bodies with drugs or alcohol, or excessively, or whatever it is that's causing the problem. B, you want to stay independent. You know, I'll turn 65 this year, the Lord willing. And I want to be independent in 20 years. I don't want people to have to wheel me around in a wheelchair because I haven't taken care of myself. So I'm doing a little more research on this. Problems that people, recently I listened to a video, this man was 80, and he interviewed a lot of people, and they said, my best years were around 65 when I retired. I had time to travel, I had time to enjoy life, but I didn't take time to take care of my body properly. I didn't take care of my high blood pressure, then I got a stroke. I didn't take care of my sugar diabetes, and then I had to have my foot amputated. I didn't take care of this, and this happened. And so we need to educate ourselves. Our body does not repair itself as quickly as when we were young. You know, when a child breaks a bone, it's called a green stick break. If you break a green stick and then you straighten it back out, it heals quickly, right? An older person breaks a bone, it's more dry and brittle. And it takes more time for that to heal. You have to allow more time. You have to be more careful. And some people, they want to continue to live at age 70 like they were 17, and it's not going to work very well. And then the last one is to improve your quality of life. You know, if you have a health problem that needs healing, and that can motivate you. I want to improve my quality of life. And now I'm having a lot of headaches, I'm having dizziness, diarrhea, whatever. Let me find the remedy for this so that my quality of life can improve and I can be more useful to humanity, more useful to God. Number 7, change your mindset about your situation. Learn to expect problems and to accept that we do not live in a perfect world. There are people who, every time they get sick, it's like, oh, why does this happen to me? I always get sick. No, this is life. Accept it. Figure out what's wrong, identify the problem, find the solution, find some healing, keep moving. And just because you have some pain doesn't mean you're incapacitated. I have a little pain today. Eunice and I are going to continue with the mission. Sometimes we have pain in the morning, but I get up and walk anyway because I know walking is good for me. And so you have to live through that. You learn to operate through pain. So change your mindset. Disappointment a lot of times comes from high expectations. If Pastor Peter disappoints me, it's probably because I expected more from him than he was capable of giving. Or he didn't even know what my expectations were. I was thinking it, but he didn't know what I was thinking. I never told him what my expectations. It's the same way with your body. Sometimes we expect everything to go perfect all the time. It's not going to happen. You're going to get sick at some point in time. You're going to break a bone. Something's going to happen. Okay, how do we respond when we don't find healing? I come up with some ideas there. We can persist in looking for healing. You don't just give up immediately. You persist. You go to this doctor. Just like the lady that had the issue of blood. She persisted for 12 years. Finally, she received the healing. Prayer. Prayer is an excellent way of finding healing. Because prayer connects you back to your Creator. Your Creator knows what your problem is. He created you. He knows the weakness that you have. I had a friend who worked in a psychiatric ward, and he said, some of these people are just as normal as you and I, but they have a weak mind. And so what Silas could handle with no problem, a stress, would cause them to lose connection. And it's the same way physically. Some people have a propensity or a weakness that other people don't have. Some people get urinary tract infection a lot. And they have to learn to drink a lot of water. They have to learn how to combat that. Some people get malaria a lot. And that's one of them that I missed here. But Artemisia, I got malaria like 3 different times, and I didn't like it. Somebody said, well, most of the Mzungus go to the organic shop and get Artemisia. And I said, well, I'm a Mzungu. Let me try that. So I haven't had malaria since. I get a powder. I'm very diligent. I make a tea with that powder. I drink it once a month. I haven't had malaria. Knock on wood. I haven't had malaria since. But it's bitter. You know, it's very bitter. You don't want to drink it. And it doesn't matter if you mix it with honey or anything. It's still bitter. But if it works, right? Yeah. All right. So then the last one is acceptance. There are some times when we have a physical problem that we don't get over. Paul had a thorn in the flesh. He prayed God 3 different times to remove the thorn in the flesh. There's a lot of speculation on what that thorn was, but it could have been a speech impediment. Somebody said it could have been a stuttering problem. And here he is, a public speaker, you see. And God finally said, my grace is sufficient. So then we look at Luke 22:42, and it's the prayer of Jesus. He said, Father, if you are willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me, yet I want your will to be done, not mine.
Nasema ya kwamba akisema, Baba, kama ni mapenzi yako niondolee kikombe hiki, lakini si kama mimi nipendavyo, bali mapenzi yako yatendeke.
Excellent. So then we accept that problem and we learn to live in spite of it. We learn to have a productive life. I knew a man who had migraine headaches. Migraine headaches, he said it was just thumping. His head was just thump, 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 thump. It gave him indigestion. He could vomit. And then when he went to somewhere in Africa, the chemist really took an interest in him, and he said, I know of a drug that has nothing to do with headaches, but it has something to do with circulation in your brain. And they had a healing prayer for him at the church. At the same time that this chemist said, why don't you try this small pill? So he took that pill and the healing prayer, and his migraine headaches went away. First time in years. Then he came back to the U.S., and I think he was running a little bit low on the pills. He didn't know where to get them now. So he started cutting them in half. And his headaches started returning some, and then he said he ran out. And he said, well, I haven't had headaches in a long time. I think the healing prayer worked. And then the headaches came back. He quit taking the medication, and the headaches came back. So he said, I realized it was a combination. God gave me an answer, and it was a combination between a pill that I need to take and the healing prayer. The pill didn't work by itself. The healing prayer didn't work by itself. But after all those years, he found a solution. Number 9, and I added this because of what we talked about earlier. Many people call themselves healers, but who is qualified to heal other people? 1 Corinthians 12:9. The same Spirit gives great faith to another, and to someone else, the one Spirit gives the gift of healing. So I think any Christian can pray for healing, but not every Christian has the gift of healing. And there are people who bill themselves on the billboard as healing, but you have to look behind the scenes before you spend a bunch of money. Because it has happened that they bring somebody on stage, this person is limping, they can hardly move, and then they pray over them, and now they're jumping around, and it's all a scam to get your money. So you have to do some research on that one. Number 10, the call to action. Find the motivation and inspiration to be healed and to help others find healing. How many of you have needed healing sometime in your life? Or you've known of someone? Has this lesson helped you at all?
Yes.
God bless you.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much.